Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series, our twice weekly show on a Tuesday and Friday at 5 p.m. live, where I'm joined by a couple of guests today to talk about Arsenal's current state of affairs. And of course, as we get into silly season and a whole, we got a story to talk about in a second that is definitely confirmation that this is the strangest time of the football calendar. We're going to talk about that and a lot more regarding Arsenal in the next half an hour to 45 minutes or so, and get your thoughts and questions in the live chat as well. Let's introduce my guests. First of all, we've got Kian. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
How are you getting on? Not too bad, now you?
Yes, very good, thank you. You're back in Ireland now, is that right? Back there.
Back in Cork, so good to be back home.
Fair play, mate. Fair play. And making his debut on TGT is Dre T. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
I'm not too bad, mate. Not too bad. I'm surviving, just like everyone else is. I'm surviving, which is the main thing in these times.
Exactly. No, of course. And I should say before we crack on with the show, us three have kind of been brought together through the collective user of your feed, which I know we've spoken about on the channel before, which is effectively an app whereby us as hosts, not just on Arsenal, but there's lots of other topics with lots of other different hosts, but specifically I know that you guys are going to be interested in the Arsenal stuff. It's a UK based thing right now. I don't know if it can, do you know if it's spread to Ireland yet? Is it out in Ireland at the moment, or we don't know?
I was told it's coming to Ireland soon, but I haven't heard when it's actually, whether it's live yet or not.
Right. So at the moment, we'll make the safe assumption that's just you for UK users right now. There is a link to the invitation to the app in the description of today's video, and on that app, you will find myself, Kian, Andre T, drop in discussion topics, questions whereby you can reply with your own video responses. It's like this is a podcast where it's just us, and you yourself, the listener, can actually respond with video questions, and it's good to get your thoughts and stuff on things. So make sure you check it out. Again, I'll drop that in at the end of the show again, but that is effectively how us three know each other now. And we're going to talk about Arsenal for the next half an hour or so. And maybe you'll like us enough to join us on the app and have a few chats with us over there. So let's crack on with it. I mean, the story that I'm going to kick off with, we talked about this briefly off air before we came live. Dre T, I'll start with you. Torreira, Atletico Madrid, trying to get us back the listeners will be aware of this because they've seen it on Twitter. But the story is that because we gazumped Atletico Madrid by activating Thomas Partey's release clause, which is apparently something that only the evilest clubs in the world do, they now want to get us back by devaluing Lucas Torreira and not playing him. This is a genuine story that I've seen come out on Arsenal Twitter today. As to its credibility, I mean, you can make your own mind up, but JT, what's your initial reaction to that?
I mean, it's probably like one of the most funniest things. I mean, obviously, after yesterday's announcement from Boris, I mean, I know everyone probably was feeling a bit down, but as an Arsenal fan, when you read something like this, it does put a smile on your face because you can't. I mean, it's funny. It is a funny story, and you read it and you think, especially as a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, you're hearing that they potentially were going to end Torreira's loan at Atletico Madrid and send him back to us because he was, surplus to requirements. So he wasn't deemed good enough, or they didn't want to play him. But now it's, they're not going to play him to get us back. I mean, it's a funny story. It's a funny story to say the least. I mean, again, I do question how credible this is, but I mean, it's funny. There's humor to it. I don't believe it, but I mean, with everything else going on in the world, I mean, I'm willing to entertain a bit of tongue in cheek and a bit of fun with these type of stories at the minute, especially in Jan. I mean, transfer window's open, and also as well, ultimately, I mean, if there was any truth to this, I mean, should there be any injuries to the Atletico squad, they'd be doing themselves a disservice by not playing a player who's there. But it's fun. It's a fun story.
It's certainly fun. The thing is, the weirdest thing about this is when you consider the kind of chaos of Arsenal in general in the transfer market, we've got to a stage now with these sorts of things, like you can't even completely discredit them. Like, it genuinely could be true. And at this stage, we don't know. I mean, we revealed on the show the news about Saliba and talking about him and his situation with the fact that he basically reacted so wrongly in the club's view after not being allowed to play the French Cup final. They effectively punished him and not played him since then. It's mad, but that turned out to be true. So, and now he's off at Nice, which I suppose we'll talk about that in a bit. But Kian, Torreira in itself, we can talk about and laugh about the story. But when you look at kind of a player that's on loan, is under contract, he's got another 2 years left at Arsenal after this season completes. And you've got the situation at Arsenal where Danny Ceballos is going to be coming to the end of his deal. Mohamed El Neni is going to have a year left on his contract. Xhaka, I think, is going to have 2 years and arguably could be sold in the summer. Where do you kind of look at Torreira as a kind of a case study in the form of Arsenal right now?
To be honest with you, I'd actually like to see him back playing with us. I did like Torreira as a player. I thought Unai Emery kind of did him dirty playing him as a number 10. And I think when he was playing first, he was getting man the matches in his defensive role. And the reason if I'm right, Simone brought him in is because he wanted Torreira to play with Partey. We can do that in Arsenal now, and we could get Atletico back again by playing them both together. So I think for me, I think Bissouma would be the signing of the January window if we can get him. But if not, I'd definitely take back Torreira, play Torreira with Partey and see how he gets on. Because if the source is true that he is not being played by Atletico, he'll have a point to prove. He'll want to come back and prove Atletico wrong and prove Arteta wrong for sending him off in the first place. So for me, I think Torreira would be a good place to play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would quite like to see him back if we can kind of get him integrated into the squad and if he's comfortable, because we know that there was some rumours that he wasn't particularly happy in England, that he was a bit homesick, but then went off to Spain. So I don't really know how credible those are either. Let's just dip into the chat box and see what some of the listeners are saying. Tom says, Tom, have we signed Messi on loan yet? He'd be good as an Emile Smith-Rowe backup, which I kind of like. Rydog says, I prefer Brandt to Buendia. If you can get both for the hour price, that would be great. I imagine they could keep wages lower on Buendia. Now, this is kind of touching on the next topic in terms of Arsenal's possible incomings. We're being linked to quite a few creative players across the window. Buendia, who we released a tactical breakdown on just literally about 2 hours ago now. We've talked about Brandt with Drew, and we've done a tactical interview on him. We've also been linked with the likes of Aouar and Isco. The list is never ending at this stage, as it typically is during the window. But Dre, who is it that you are kind of personally hoping that Arsenal go for? And also, what do you kind of expect Arsenal to do by January 31st?
I mean, the Jan window is always a tough one, isn't it? You want the best. So, I mean, I guess the bar would be set very high with Houssem Aouar. So that would be sort of like the perfect scenario in terms of a creative player, as everyone would have seen what he can do in the Champions League against some of the very best teams in Europe. So you look at that and you think, right, that's the type of player we want. But when you do realistically look at it and you think, hang on a minute, look at the needs of what we can do right now. I think Buendia would be perfect. I mean, when he was in the Prem playing for Norwich, he's someone that I looked at, and sometimes, I mean, I know stats are one thing, but sometimes you just got to look at a player and look at them and what they're doing in the game for a team like Norwich when they're in the Prem and they're battling relegation. And he had some great performances. So I think Buendia would be a great addition and a great fit. I mean, I've heard rumours of the money that Norwich are trying to put out there for Buendia, and rightly so, as he's one of their better players and probably one of their best top 2 players in the Championship. So, I mean, if the fee is about 40 mil, I mean, maybe that might be somewhere where Arsenal might have to, they might turn away from that fee, because as we know, that money's not really floating about the club like that, or that's what we're led to believe. But I think Buendia would be a realistic fit for us. I mean, he can play in a varied of positions as well. I think he works hard, great energy about him, and he's got quality on the ball, which is what we kind of want and need at this moment in time. So I think he would be a great fit. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, but he's from the Championship and whatever else. But Championship is a very competitive league. I mean, we've seen so many players now over the more recent years come from the Championship to the Premiership, and they do a fantastic job. So we can look at Godfrey at Everton. Looks great. City, he sat in there, done a fantastic job. Obviously going back to Robertson from Hull to Liverpool. I mean, there's so many players you can pick out, but I think he'll be another one.
I think there's lots of players. Also, we're going to get linked to more. I can't imagine that it will be limited to the ones that we've seen. The media, obviously, in different outlets do like to link us to everywhere at the moment. But I agree with you. I like the profile of Buendia. When talking to Joe from the Canary Cast, which is a Norwich-based podcast, about him earlier on today, he cites the fact that, of course, whilst he's kind of played on the right-hand side for Norwich, but for most of the time he's been there this and last season, he's kind of a very narrow-minded wide player, whereas he cuts inside, he drifts in, he has a lot of freedom under Daniel Farke. And he obviously has the maddest stat is he's created more chances than any other player in Europe, which is an insane statistic. I don't mean in Europe's top 5 leagues. I mean in any league. And that is just an insane statistic. Which, when you look at Arsenal, and obviously before the emergence of Emile Smith-Rowe, we were so lacking in creativity. And those kind of statistics just jump out at you like, well, clearly that's the evidence. And not only that, it's not someone who's coming from a foreign league. It's someone that's already transitioned to the English leagues. It's played in the Premier League and doesn't necessarily need that time to get used to the rigours of English football. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer. Kian, in the chat, we had a couple of questions about an alternative, which was Julian Brandt. If I can just find the question, if I scroll up. Here we go. Sanyik says, hi, Tom. Do you think Brandt can do the job in the Premier League? Recently, Bundesliga players are failing, such as Kai Havertz, Timo Werner. Keep up the good work. What do you think about that, mate?
Yeah, to be honest, I was kind of thinking the same thing, because if I'm right, Brandt was also in Bayern Leverkusen and was doing very well for them. As we know, Havertz is the same type of player. They had a big hope. Came to the England for a big price, and he's not performing. And that's the thing. Like, can we take that risk? Arsenal can't really take risks anymore for players. With Buendia, he's proven. He's played with Norwich, so why not go, as you said in your last few podcasts, English proven players? Just take them. I know they might not be the high profile like we wanted, but we can take Arsene Wenger's word for that with Rob Holding. Sorry that I didn't cost the big bucks. He was proven. He's a centre-back from Derby I'm right saying Derby, that we know that is doing well, so why can't we trust Buendia? The only thing about Buendia is, going from your podcast earlier, I feel like the discipline side of it, the Norwich fans said that his discipline isn't great. Do you really think that's a good call as well with the likes of Ceballos? Ceballos isn't. There's already trouble in the changing room. Can we add more oil to the fire? That's my only concern.
Well, you look at Arsenal and the amount of red cards we've got this season. You'd say no.
That's my worry.
What Joe was saying earlier was he said he can be a bit of a hothead. Like, he said he got elbowed in a match last season and then just scythed down the same player and got a red card like minutes later. So, and to be fair, there's no evidence to suggest by coming to Arsenal that would be tempered, because Granit Xhaka's been doing that for years. So I don't think it was necessarily decreased. However, what I would say is that whilst you look at the negatives of a player of that, the positives you get from a player with that kind of tenacity is the full 100% effort all the time, determined to win games. And it's usually that sort of frustration is born out of a frustration of not winning, which is a good attitude to have in a squad. So you can look at it kind of in two ways, I suppose. Let's drop into the chat box again. Antonio says, Tom, we have to be talking about Matt Smith, who is currently on loan at Swindon Town. I think he would be a good person to consider giving him a chance in our midfield. Now, of course, Swindon Town and Arsenal are very, very different levels. He is doing very well at Swindon. You can only beat what's in front of you. I bring this up about Tyrese John-Jules at Doncaster. He's a bit of a forgotten man amongst the Arsenal fan base right now, with how Balogun and Nketiah are at the club. But you look at some of the ways that some of our youngsters are progressing. You see how Saka has gone through the ranks and come into the first team. You see how Emile Smith-Rowe and Martinelli, very young players, now having an impact themselves. There is all the hope in the world that some of these young guys can have a future at the club. It's just when you see cases like Joe Willock and Nketiah, who I look at as players that ultimately I don't see having a long-term future at the club, it can go one of two ways very quickly. If Matt Smith does really well on loan at Swindon, then great. And hopefully he can come back and maybe integrate very quickly into the Arsenal team. We've seen lots of Premier League players go on loan to lower leagues and then come back and do exceptionally well. You look at Mason Mount at Chelsea. I hate to say it, but you look at Harry Kane at Spurs. So lots of players do it from the academies and go in and have a massive impact in the first team. But it depends on their application and how they transition to the Premier League. Dre, a possible question on outgoings from Juan Felipe Palacio Rivera, our favourite named user in the chat box, says, Tom, do you think that the Eddie Nketiah rumours to Wolves could be true? And on that, do you kind of expect him to be moved on in the near future?
What a name, by the way.
Yes.
What a
Not
name.
holding back.
Nah, the Eddie rumours, I mean, I agree with you that I think Eddie and Joe Willock, I think their careers at Arsenal are going to be a lot shorter than longer. I think if there is a possibility to move Eddie on, I don't know if the rumours are true, but if they are true, I think that's definitely an option I'd exercise with him. See what we can get out of Wolves there. I mean, they've got a bit of money behind them. If we can, you look at the money we sold Iwobi for. I mean, I know he maybe played a few more games than Eddie. But if you look at that sort of fee, if we can get anything close to that, I think that's great business, if you ask me. I mean, I know people say, Eddie's done well for the under-21s, and he has broken records and all the rest of it. But just his style of play, I just don't think it's suited to this Arsenal team. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe somewhere at Wolves where he can maybe get more game time, he can play and be that poacher for them. But for us, I just don't see it.
No, I don't want to obviously categorize players purely based upon like their physique or their physical structure, but there is something about a player as slight as Eddie is, and he is he's got a smaller frame. He's not particularly muscular. Like, he's a bit way off Adama Traore sort of levels, it's fair to say. But even he's not really, for me, even kind of close to that right now, and close to being someone that could hold off players in the final third. You look at Lacazette. Lacazette does really well with his back to goal, turns players really well when he's on form. And I just can't quite see. And I look at other teams across the league. If you are of a nature, and there are players in the Premier League that do very well that are of that body structure. You look at Gabriel Jesus, for instance, but they're very, very technical players that are excellent on the ball, that can spin a man, turn a man, and still have that strength to hold players off when they need to. Yeah. I don't see that in Eddie. I see Eddie as very much a poacher, not someone that creates chances 100%. For himself.
100%.
And so I agree with you, Dre. I don't see that future. Same with Willock as well, in a way. I see them as very similar kind of case studies for the positions that they are.
Yeah, I mean, just touching on Willock quickly. I mean, I don't know what his best position is. So when I look at him on the pitch, I'm like, is he best as a pure centre midfielder, like box to box? Is he a 10? Is he a wide player? Is he even a forward? I'm not sure what his actual best position is. So I think that's to the detriment of the player, because he doesn't actually have a position, or he's not entirely sure, the manager's not sure where to actually play him. That means that he kind of just fits in anywhere and everywhere. And I know in the past we've seen players like, have great careers by doing that. Like, you look at a James Milner, he's kind of just been, a jack of all trades, master of none type of player, and he's carved out a fantastic career for himself. But I just don't see Willock having any particular, strength in one position where you can say, right, that's his position, we're going to keep him for that position. So I think, again, if he can be used in, player plus cash deal, I know they're very hard to do, and it's easy for us as fans to sit here, just throw him in part of a deal, because it doesn't work like that. But if he can be used as part of a deal, maybe in the summer, we look to ship him out, then I would very much look at that 100%. As good as he's done in Europa League, I mean, that's Europa League football, and so I'd look to ship him out.
Yeah, I agree. It's the position-wise, I kind of look at him as in between a 10 and an 8, and we don't really have a role for that, because I can't work out if he's an attacking midfielder. I can't work out if he's whether just a box-to-box midfielder. And he kind of comes on as kind of a bit of a sub to give you the legs in the last 10 to 20 minutes and give you kind of an out ball and a drive out from the back. But in terms of a starting player at Arsenal, we don't really have a place for that kind of player for me. Rahil, thank you ever so much for joining up as one of our new members. Much appreciated. I hope you enjoy the exclusive content. If you join up as an expert member, you get access to our Discord server as well, which Kian can vouch for is an exceptional place to be. So make sure you check it out, son. If we look at a question which kind of wanted to segue on to other areas of the pitch, let me just find it 1 second. Anyway, Kian, the question was about kind of what other areas of the pitch do Arsenal need to look at beyond just the creative position?
I don't know. A few weeks ago, I would have said striker because Lacazette wasn't in form. But look at him now; he's playing incredible football, scoring goals. So we can't really complain. I was getting rid of Lacazette before. Now I kind of want to keep him. There was rumors as well. I don't know if they're true or not about Wilfried Zaha. I think we don't need him. That's a pointless signing now. Time's passed.
Oh, that's a big shout. That is.
I think
he's pointless. I mean, I'm kind of in agreement that I don't think Arsenal should go for him at this stage. But in terms of it being a pointless signing, like you will need to, for the listeners' sake, I think you'll need to explain that.
No, I'm a big Wilfried Zaha fan. I have to hold my hands up and say I am.
You don't sound like it.
No, I really am. It's just the fact that I feel like Martinelli, Saka, we have Pepe as well. If we got rid of Pepe, then Zaha, definitely bring him in. But I just feel like we have too much people in that position at the moment. It's the same with Willian. If we got rid of Willian as well, then bring Zaha in. I just feel like right now we need to back up a centre attacking midfielder. As much as I love him, Hector Bellerin, we need a right back. If we can get the likes of what's his name? Brighton, Lamptey, if we can get Lamptey.
Yeah.
If we can, I know Rob Holding's playing very well as well, but I'd like to get Konate if we could, that type of player, right-footed centre back.
I'd love a Ferrari.
And again, I feel like Runnerson is just not there. We need a backup goalkeeper big time.
Yeah, I think you summed up pretty much what the people are saying in the chat. JD says a backup goalkeeper, a centre midfielder, a right back and a right-sided centre back. Zamir says right back, backup keeper. Left winger is interesting and a defensive midfielder. So I think pretty much the chat box is very much in agreement with the areas of the pitch that you should be looking at. Dre, I'm going to throw this to you as well to get your thoughts on it. Looking at specific areas, we know that we've got the kind of these 3 or 4 positions that Arsenal should look to upgrade on, but what beyond the creative midfielder position is the priority for you that Arsenal should be targeting?
This might sound weird, but I think the backup keeper might be a bigger one than people actually sort of giving it any sort of thought and attention to. Just purely because if you look at the amount of games and with COVID being rife at the minute, I mean, if Leno, touch wood, he doesn't catch COVID or he doesn't have an injury. But if he does, it's a serious problem because all of us, it really is, because a back 4 will have trust in the keeper and vice versa. So all of a sudden, you take one element away, it's a new relationship that has to be built, and a newfound trust that has to be built between the goalkeeper and especially the 2 centre backs that are playing in front of him. And now we've seen Runnerson in a few games, not just the Man City game where he made a couple of mistakes. And on the Thursday nights, I mean, he's made a couple of mistakes there, but he's got away with it because we've had, much of the ball. We've controlled the games. We've looked fantastic. But I think that is a bigger worry. I mean, if you look at centre back, we've got so many centre backs in the club. I mean, we spent £27 million on Saliba, didn't play him, and we've sent him on loan without even him playing 1 minute for the first team. So we've got money. So if we're doing stuff like that, there's clearly options there. And if you look at just the number of centre backs we have, I think there's a lot of bodies to cover. They all might not be good or what we want, but there's a number to cover the position. Right back, we've got Ainsley there who can cover the position, plus Cedric. So there's 2 bodies that can cover Hector Bellerin should we need to, or rotate Hector Bellerin if he's having an off week. Whereas after Leno, Runnerson, Matt Macey, I mean, you're looking at it, and I think that's a bigger worry. And I think if we can get someone in, even if it's only on a short-term basis from now to end of the season, I think that's where we got to look at. Definitely bringing someone in Jan, because just for the amount of games that we've got, and if we do have to take the Europa League a lot more seriously, which looks like we may have to, Still, I mean, the league is up and down. I mean, you look at it, 3 wins, you look at where we are, another 2 wins on the bounce. Who knows where we'll be with this league this season? But just the amount of games and the number of games, there's going to be a couple of weeks where Arteta's going to have to say, right, Leno, come out for a rest and put someone else in. And if it's Runnison, you still want to be competitive and collect points in those games. And I'm not sure Runnison is our man. I'm sorry. I'm thumbs down for Runnison. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's our man. So I think that's got to be our main priority in Jan, after the creative midfield, obviously.
No, I don't think it's as crazy of a suggestion at all. I think it's completely justified considering the performance we've seen so far this season. I'm not just talking about the Manchester City game. It's not reactionary based off that. He has, for me, looked suspect when he's been called upon at times in the Europa League. Yes, he made a good save against Jesus in that quarterfinal, but he was at fault for the first goal. I thought being out of position. I thought he was. I mean, even Mahrez picked up on the point in his post-match interview about how he was shocked where Runnison was standing for the free kick. So it is somewhere. There was a suggestion from Tom, which I was actually going to bring up myself, about Ruffier being fired from Saint-Etienne makes him a good backup option if rumours are true. He is 34 years old. He is without a club. It could be. It's not one that I would say that you do on a permanent basis, but as Dre said, like a short-term 6-month deal until the summer, just to cover us until that point, especially with, as you said, COVID's so rife at the moment, and Leno could go down for 3 matches, as Gabriel has, at any moment. So maybe bringing in a player like a Ruffier on loan for those 6 months, or just on a 6 month, it's not even on loan, it's a 6-month contract because he's without a club right now. So it could be someone that you look at there as an option for sure. We've got about 15 minutes or so left, so keep throwing your questions in, guys. Samuel Gray says Sergio Ramos or a right-sided centre-back next year, sign him on a free and throw him money at him. 34-year-old is out of contract in the summer. I wrote a piece on it today. He has rejected the last contract offer from them because they've only offered him a 1-year deal. Arsenal do like giving pensioners more than a 1-year deal, as we know with William. So maybe we'll be tempted to throw ourselves into the ring with Ramos. I very much doubt it. Rahil says, is Macy that bad, or does he not just get a look in? I've seen Macy play. My missus is a Charlton fan, and when I've gone to see games with her, we watched them play Plymouth when he was on loan there, and he looks very good. Like, genuinely, he's a massive keeper. So I think he's like 6'7", 6'8". So he's a huge keeper. But I'm not. To be fair, at his age, and I think he's now mid-20s, maybe slightly even later than that. I will double check that. He should have, if he was going to, have broken into the squad already. He's 26 years old. At that age, if you're a 3rd or 4th choice keeper, which is effectively 4th choice because Arsenal are looking to bring in another keeper, he needs to be moving on for the sake of his own career at this stage. He is a lower league keeper in terms of his quality, and he probably enjoys being at Arsenal, but for the sake of his career, he certainly does need to move on. We've also got, I think it's Okonkwo, the young youth team goalkeeper coming through. It's very highly rated as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that does work. I've realised how many times I say the words "it's going to be interesting to see." I say that over and over again. And all it is with Arsenal is just speculation.
It is, one big question mark.
It's just utterly Arsenal is just one big question mark for sure. Machiavelli says, what do you think about Luis Alberto from Lazio? Who's a Spanish attacking midfielder, or Zielinski, who's the Polish midfielder from Napoli. Kian, do you know anything about these two? Are they anyone that take your fancy from those?
Honestly, I have no idea of either, only that whoever has them in FIFA always scores against me.
Fair enough. I mean, Luis Alberto is previously Liverpool, if he was, correctly, and he never really got a look in. Has moved to Lazio and he's become one of the best players in the Italian league. Zielinski's kind of a box-to-box midfielder for Napoli, which we do need. I think that kind of position next to Partey is somewhere that we need to upgrade upon. We touched on how El Neni's probably going to be going. Ceballos' loan is ending. Xhaka could be going. I think that is a position that Arsenal need to target alongside a creative midfielder. You've talked about Bissouma, Kian. We've been linked to Jean Jordan at Sevilla, who I rate very highly as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if Arsenal do go out and sign someone of that ilk. As we kind of come towards the end of the last 10 minutes, I want to get your thoughts on Arsenal's situation because, of course, on your feed, one of the big things that we've been posting on the app is very much about the discussion of Arteta. The last 3 games have completely turned. We've beaten Chelsea, Brighton and West Brom in quick succession. And you look at those games and you look at them in isolation, it looks very, very good right now. if we go into the next game, which I believe is Crystal Palace in the league anyway, rather than I know we've got Newcastle in the cup, but the next league game being, I believe it's Palace followed by Newcastle, things can change again very quickly if we happen to drop points in either of those. So, Dre, at what point do you kind of look at the Arsenal situation as saying he's done a good job and he's finally turned things around? When does that kind of point happen for you?
That's a great question. For me personally, let's get through this sort of we've gone through the Christmas period and those games over Boxing and New Year's, but I still think we're still in that patch of games, if that makes sense. We're still kind of just getting there to the back end of that. So let's get through that. I think we're going to start to come through that now. And if we start, well, we've started, I know the Chelsea game, I'm not saying that they're a team that we should be beating, but we've started now to beat the teams we should be beating, which is kind of what we expect. You know, you look at West Brom and you look at Brighton on paper, those are games we should be picking up 3 points from individually, and we have done that. So again, if we go into the Crystal Palace game, even if it is you know, a dirty back post goal and it's a 1-0 scrappy win, but we get the win, I think fans will all of a sudden say, do you know what, this team are fighting and they're battling to get points on the board. And I think that will kind of be the turnaround point. Whereas if all of a sudden now the players get a bit comfortable and they're like, right, we've got 6 points on the board, so 9 points on the board out of the last 3, and we're kind of creeping up the table, but they slip back into old habits, then that would be, well, hang on a minute, what's gone on there to change all of a sudden to this week, and we'll drop in points here. Whereas if we are sort of now, these are going to be the performance, these are the young players that are going to start the games, and we kick on, then I think the fan base would be right. Hang on, he's starting to start the younger players that want to play, that sort of wear, you know, their heart on the sleeve and their blood and guts, and they're running around, they're running through a brick wall for him. Then I think that will be, hang on, that's all we kind of want. There's no shame in losing, but there's a way to lose in that sense.
I think there is a way to. It's even just like a way to play. And when we were losing those games, as you say, like we were losing them in horrific performances and after, I mean, ahead of the Chelsea game, I couldn't see us scoring a goal, let alone taking any points from that game.
No.
And it's amazing how just adding a couple of players in Emile Smith-Rowe and Martinelli and some players turning their form like Lacazette has changed everything. And Arsenal are looking like, after that West Brom game, again, one of a very dangerous sides in the league with their attacking capacity. So
yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to like the energy as well. I mean, all of a sudden, you look at the energy levels of Saka, Martinelli, and Smith-Rowe. All of a sudden, as an experienced player in Lacazette, you're looking behind you or around you, and you're seeing these young boys putting in all the work, all the effort, and the energy. You're thinking, hang on a minute, if they're doing it, why am I not doing it? And if they're trying to create for me, then he's going to start moving, making runs so he can be found and be part of it. Whereas beforehand, when you look before the Chelsea game, it was kind of like, well, everyone's behind the ball. No one's going to take the chance of running beyond the ball. It's all sort of sideways and backwards. And no one's kind of breaking their necks, and everyone's kind of looking at each other. Well, why aren't you moving? Why aren't you moving? And it's finger pointing. Whereas now it's, hang on, well, I'm going to take the risk. Play me, give me the ball, give Martinelli the ball, give Saka the ball, give Smith-Rowe the ball. These are players that want to make things happen. They want to impress. They want to, you know, they want to show that this is their team, and they're the ones that are ready now to start and wear the shirt and say, this is my position, my spot. And if you more experienced players don't want it, that's fine. Get out, because I'm here. I'll take your shirt.
Exactly. And it's going to be we need, and this is when I get very hung up on the point of some people wouldn't like us to see a creative midfielder signed because it could have an impact on Emile Smith-Rowe and his kind of progression. And I want Smith-Rowe to succeed. Trust me, I really do. But Arsenal need to be ruthless with their squad. If there's a chance to upgrade in any position, they should be looking to take it. We can't be so attached to these players that we can't think we can. And ultimately, that's part of the reason why Arsene Wenger, I felt, started to decline towards the end of his tenure, because he stayed too loyal to players that ultimately needed to move on. And we didn't do that quick enough. We weren't ruthless in the market enough. So it's finding that balance at the end of the day. Kian, final question for yourself. From Juan, our favourite named player in the chat box this evening, says, panel, do you think if we would have played like we have in the recent games against the likes of Leicester, Burnley, Everton, Southampton, do you think we would have got more from those games?
First of all, he put a comment in earlier saying that, wow, Keane turning against Bellerin.
I did see that. Yeah.
So obviously he's been watching my last few videos and knows how much I'm a big fan of Bellerin. But going to this question, I really do think definitely Burnley and Leicester, we would have got some points. Everton, maybe, in the sense of Everton weren't great on the day, but neither were we. We just played very backwards and sideways, which wasn't great. And Southampton, for me, I thought that was a very good draw. Like, you know how good Southampton are playing this season, with Danny Ings and stuff like that as well. And they had Vestergaard playing against us. They didn't have Vestergaard last night, and Vestergaard for corners and set pieces is a really dangerous player. So for me, we definitely would have won 2, if not 3. But I remember my first podcast with you, we said that there's a lot of pressure going on the young fellas, and even though he was injured, the main focal point was Martinelli from the fans. Yeah. Martinelli is coming now and proving what it means to be an Arsenal player. He's doing it for the jersey, and he's literally running his legs into the ground. He's getting into tackles and he's actually running to the keeper to break or closing down that we haven't seen in a long time. Like the one time we saw it last season was actually Southampton when Eddie Nketiah scored off the back of it. And I just don't understand why players aren't doing it a lot more. And going back to my idea of bringing Zaha in, I want Martinelli playing more than anyone, because I feel like he's the biggest prospect we have, as well as Saka. I think those two, we need to have bubble wrap around them and make sure that they're okay, because they're the reason we're playing well. And they're, again, Martinelli wasn't playing in any of those games.
I see a lot of sorry to cut across you there. I see a lot of potential in this squad. I think the lack of Partey this season has been huge. I genuinely I'm so gutted that we haven't been able to see him like in the team consistently because of injury, and it's a huge to the detriment of Arteta, who made the decision to push him back into the lineup literally in the Spurs game, and that had cost us. And I think had we have had Partey for the run of 10 games where we were so poor, we may not have had so many of those poor results. Maybe we'll look back in hindsight and say it was kind of the kick up the backside that we needed, those 10 games that were so horrific, that has kind of pushed us on and maybe caused Arteta to rethink things and to put more faith in the younger players. But when Partey comes back, the potential of him, the potential of Martinelli and Smith Rowe and Saka is great. The potential what we could add this January window, and the potential that comes from next summer when we lose a lot of our deadwood players because their contracts are expiring, the players that we're going to look to move on. I mean, the technical director, Edu, which I know a lot of people have very, very strong opinions about the man. I'm very much of the opinion, I think that a lot of the problems at board level were down to Raul's handling of the club rather than what Edu's done in a short space of time. I understand that he should have done more in the last summer window to bring in that creative player and to move out some of the deadwood. But I think I look at that summer as still infected partly by what Sanyehi was able to do at the start with the Willian situation, which still heavily involved Raul as well. There's going to be mistakes. Nothing is ever going to be completely perfect. Every club makes mistakes in the transfer window. But it has been happening too often for Arsenal and on a too consistent basis. And hopefully the signs of Gabriel and Partey being brought in and the signs of Tierney and Gabriel Martinelli being brought in over the last couple of years are good signs that things are changing and we're moving forwards with our recruitment. So fingers crossed that does happen. That's going to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. Just before we do wrap up, though, make sure you click the link in the description for your invitation to your feed if you are specifically a UK listener. Apologies for those that are not. Hopefully in the near future we can announce that it is spreading into other territories, but it is not under our control. We are purely the pawns in the machine right now, so hopefully we can get that news to you as soon as possible. If you are a UK based listener and you would like to get involved with some Arsenal discussion based topics, that app is fantastic for that. I'm going to be posting a video in there straight after the video, and I know that Kian has posted one already, so make sure you jump in and check that out. Speaking of which, thank you, Kian, for your time this afternoon. Much appreciated.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me on again. Good to be on with Dre T and you as well. Finally having your feed kind of like all in same time. Normally it's you respond in an hour's time.
Yeah, true, very, very true. And thank you, Dre T. Absolutely fantastic debut on the show, mate. And I appreciate your time.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, happy to come on anytime again, mate. Loved it.
Of course, fantastic stuff. You will see Dre T and Kian back on the show very, very soon, I am sure, as we go ahead towards Arsenal's match against Newcastle United in the FA Cup, which comes as a little bit of an irritant of a break in the Premier League kind of run, and hoping that we can still obviously keep that momentum up. And we've got a bit of a romantic relationship with that competition, so we'd still like to progress, of course. And fingers crossed these COVID cases drop, not just only in football, of course, but globally is the way we should be looking at things, really. So as the vaccine rolls out, fingers crossed things start to change, but we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you so much for listening. If you drop a like on the video, I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and check out the tactical breakdown on Buendia that went live at 3 o'clock UK time today. But other than that, it's been a pleasure to speak to you as always, and as always, up the Arsenal.